Why does nobody talk about the movie Glory? In my Civil War obsessed childhood, I loved this movie. I am very surprised it doesn't come up more often. It stars Matthew Broderick, Morgan Freeman, Carrie Elways, Denzel Washington, and Andre Braugher. So obviously the acting is amazing. It also has great action, vivid historical detail, and an incredible score. It's written by Kevin Jarrah, the same guy who wrote The Mummy and Tombstone, so this should be the perfect movie for history nerds who grew up in the 90s, which I know there are a lot of on this platform. But really, there aren't that many videos about it. Real History, a channel that I love, has one of the few comprehensive breakdowns on the movie's historical accuracy, so make sure to check out their video if you want to learn more. I know a lot of people out there are familiar with this film because of the Pepsi version that they used to show in 8th grade American history class, but I'm telling you, if you have not seen the theatrical, uncut version, you have got to give it a watch. You'll know it's the right one if a guy's head blows up in the first 10 minutes. For God's sake, come on! Glory is directed by Edward Zwick and came out in 1989. Great year. It follows the real-life story of the 54th Massachusetts Infantry, one of the first, and thanks to this movie, the most well-known regiment of black troops to fight during the American Civil War. Today, I want to talk about some of the historical themes present in Glory. Specifically, the theme of masculinity. Now, masculinity is certainly an interesting topic on the internet. Some of you need to learn to unpack your adjectives.
Adjectives are words you use to really describe things.
Each main character has their own sort of masculine arc throughout the film, where they struggle to fit into traditional gender roles, but persevere through building bonds and overcoming challenges. The movie literally begins with Matthew Broderick's character, Robert Gould Shaw, writing a letter to his mom like he was at summer camp. Shaw is the only actual historical figure from the main cast, and serves as our nice white guy character, because you gotta have one. You gotta get that white savior money shot. In the film's opening set piece, Robert has to go through his baptism of fire during the Battle of Antietam, and then he is brought to the medical hospital with a little boo-boo, while another guy is getting his leg sawed off. It's clear the film is trying to get across Shaw's youth in these early scenes, and portray him as someone who is naive and maybe a little in over his head. He was only 23 years old when he took command of the 54th Massachusetts, which is why they cast the guy who played basically the embodiment of youth itself. In later scenes, Shaw has some scruff on his face, and you can tell something's different about him. And I think Matthew Broderick does a great job portraying this change. His ultimate arc in the film is presented through the traditionally masculine concept of military leadership. Shaw was the son of a wealthy abolitionist family and just kind of did that thing that a lot of rich kids do, where they just fail upwards into a leadership role. He takes his new responsibilities seriously, but doesn't really understand what exactly is required of him. Still scarred by his own combat experience, Shaw pushes past training and directly assaults the men's dignity. However, Shaw eventually grows into a great leader by moving away from traits like anger and strict discipline and towards building trust, doing acts of service, listening to his men, and using his privilege to stand up to other men, even those with higher rank and status than himself. Just after Robert's first taste of combat, we are introduced to John Rawlins, played by Morgan Freeman. Rawlins is with a detachment of gravediggers, following the Union advance. In the first 2 years of the war, black men were forbidden from joining the U.S. Army. Early on, people who fled to federal camps were returned to their enslavers, until one man, Benjamin Butler, who's actually kinda awesome and could definitely get his own episode, refused.
Major Carey of Virginia asked if I did not feel myself bound by my constitutional obligations to deliver up fugitives under the Fugitive Slave Act. To this I replied that the Fugitive Slave Act did not affect a foreign country, which Virginia claimed to be.
While this was a step in the right direction, now black men who fled to federal camps were given the label of contraband and used only for manual labor, which included digging graves. The Rawlins character serves as our connection to these freed men who served in this auxiliary role while being trapped in a suspended state between freedom and slavery. Later, when he joins the ranks of the 54th, he is shown as a fatherly figure, someone who offers guidance to the younger men, including his commanding officer. Rawlins is presented as patient, supportive, nurturing, but stern and direct when he needs to be. We learn towards the end of the film that Rawlins was forced to make the impossible choice of leaving his loved ones in order to pursue freedom.
Now, I run off and left all my young'uns and my kinfolk in bondage.
Because of slavery, Rollins was incapable of being a father to his own family. In the racist, patriarchal society of the United States, depriving black men of the status of manhood is fundamental, and a major talking point for white supremacists focuses on black fatherhood. Like so much of white supremacy, this is just the same old bullshit repackaged for the millionth time. After the war, proponents of the lost cause myth pushed the disgusting idea that slave owners were actually some sort of benevolent father figure to their imprisoned workforce. A straight line can be drawn from that narrative to the equally idiotic idea that black families were somehow better off under slavery. White people will do any sort of mental gymnastics to not have to face the horrors done in their name. Black familiar structures were not respected under slavery. Marriages had no legal basis. Some marriage vows read, "Till death or distance do you part." Spouses or children could be taken away at any time, sold sometimes thousands of miles away, just for the profit of the slave owner.
For God's sake, you're not sentimental in the least.
My sentimentality extends the length of a coin.
Fatherhood is often perceived as our most basic understanding of authority. So when enslaved men were denied any rights as fathers, it was a declaration by their enslaver of his ultimate power over their lives and the lives of their loved ones. The generational nature of American slavery makes it uniquely cruel in world history. The literal and figurative scars of this cruelty can be seen on the character of Trip, played by Denzel Washington. This is without a doubt my favorite Denzel Washington performance. There's so much depth in everything he does. I like how we learn very little about his background, but what we do learn is just devastating.
Yeah, I ran away when I was 12 years old. I ain't never looked back.
Never had no family and killed off my mama.
The character is presented as being trapped in a permanent state of regression. The trauma of slavery and Tripp's escape at such a young age forced him to believe that he had to fight for everything, and that he was the only person that he could trust. The relationship between Tripp and Rollins is at the heart of the film. Sergeant Rollins tries to serve as a father figure to Tripp, who chafes against his efforts.
Ain't nobody said nothing to you, pap.
Oh, I see. So the white man give you a couple of stripes. Next thing you know, you hollering, ordering everybody around.
Both men are marked by the loss of their familiar ties and can only begin to heal by embracing their new life with their found family. This relationship is interesting because their characters are essentially meant to represent the same person, Sergeant William Carney. Carney escaped slavery in Virginia using the Underground Railroad and made his way to Massachusetts. He was studying to be a minister when he joined the ranks of the 54th. During the assault on Fort Wagner, the regimental color barrier was shot, and Carney grabbed the flag before it hit the ground. After Shaw's death, Carney charged up the ramparts of the fort with the colors flying, and the regiment rallied around him. Then, despite being shot several times, including one ball that broke his femur, he carried the flag back to Union lines. For his actions, Sergeant Carney became the first black man awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. In 1937 goddamn years later. The delay in Carney's accommodation represents how black soldiers, like those in the 54th, were initially erased, or worse, demonized after the war. The American Civil War was framed for decades as a tragic misunderstanding between white men, with black men's involvement being insignificant. The possibility that the men of the 54th could fight and die and not be rewarded for their sacrifice is hinted at during the interaction between Shaw and Tripp later on in the movie. This makes it unique amongst movies that discuss race. The idea that despite their on-screen efforts, the lives of the people of color represented in the film might not actually get better. Of course, this concept is undercut by having this stupid racism is over scene where some characters who said or did something racist earlier on in the film has some magical change of heart, and everything is fine now. Stop bringing it up.
Get Mel, 54th!
Fucking white people. Anyway, Carrie Elways. Most people know Carrie Elways as Wesley from The Princess Bride, or Pierre Despereaux if you're cool. But for me, I'll always think of him as Major Cabot Forbes. Major Forbes starts the film as the regiment's immature second-in-command. We are introduced to him getting schwasty-faced at a party. He has a pessimistic outlook on the 54's popularity and on himself.
You picture me in charge of a regiment? Picture me in charge of anything.
He also isn't convinced that the men of the regiment will ever even see combat.
Marching is probably all they'll ever get to do, Robert.
I like how the movie shows Forbes mature by shrinking the size of his glass. He's got a whole bottle here, then just a nice respectable glass there, And now, just a final little glass. It's also interesting how the film has Shaw and Forbes sort of take turns being the nice, white, audience POV character. Shaw fits into an interesting trope of the damaged white savior. This can often be used as an excuse for the white savior to be downright abusive to the people of color that they're supposed to be saving. This abuse is even justified by the film later on. Often when this kind of white savior appears, they need some sort of temporary or surrogate good white character until our main white protagonist can heal from their damage. Like this fucking guy from the movie Men of Honor. Cabot serves as our nice white stand-in until Robert gets all the abuse out of his system and can reach peak Christ-like white saviorism before the credits roll. A major turning point for Forbes is when he contemplates leaving the regiment after the Confederate proclamation that any white officer leading black troops would be executed if captured. He stays, despite the realities of this fate being very real. Slavers held a special hatred for white men who they believed betrayed their race by leading black troops. White Southerners often characterized abolitionist men as feminine, echoing the idea that giving a shit about other people makes you somehow less of a man. Forbes' growth mirrors that of Shaw's. Despite having an established friendship early in the film, they come into conflict while the regiment is in training. Forbes calls out Robert on a few of his more questionable decisions. Their main point of contention is Shaw's treatment of their mutual friend, Thomas Searles, played by Andre Braugher. Now you instantly like Thomas because, obviously, it's Andre Braugher.
Just know, you have disappointed all three of us.
Thomas and Shaw grew up together, and they come from similar economic classes. Thomas is portrayed as an outlier in the 54th Massachusetts, even though historically he was closer to the norm. He represents the established free black population in the North, many of whom worked alongside wealthy abolitionists like Shaw's parents. Thomas mentions working for the Freedmen's Relief Association, an actual organization started by Robert's father that helped runaways find housing in Boston. There were organizations like this throughout the country, and many continued after the war as the Freedmen's Bureau. They helped resettle former slaves, paid for their health care, built schools, and helped marriages get recognized legally. Many of the enlisted men in the 54th had been battling slavery for decades and saw the formation of the regiment as a way of continuing that same fight. Thomas is intellectual, well-dressed, and refined, attributes that paint him as naive, privileged, soft, and
not a very good soldier.
He's bullied by Tripp and Sergeant Mulcahy, the regiment's drill instructor? Someone saw Full Metal Jacket. Mulcahy's there to be an epitome of manliness. He is the ultimate soldier. He's tough, mean, aggressive, violent, and look at that mustache too. And like the scene earlier, the abuse Thomas endures is later justified in the film. The idea of turning a sweet boy into a soulless killing machine is what most anti-war films caution against. Military service and combat experience, equaling masculinity, has created the overly militarized society we find ourselves in. The desire to prove themselves on the battlefield is an overarching conflict for the 54th throughout glory. While we might disagree with this violent objective, we have to be careful not to put too much of our 21st century vision onto it. During the Civil War, black men being allowed to fight in the army against the rebelling planter class was a main issue being pressed by those fighting for black advancement. Frederick Douglass was at the forefront of this effort, and as he says in his criminally short screen time,
Will offer pride and dignity to those who have known only degradation.
The infusion of almost 200,000 black soldiers hastened the end of the war, and with it, the end of slavery. These troops were only permitted to fight after relentless pressure put on by activists like Douglass. The black men who fought for the Union Army and crushed the aristocratic slavers' rebellion represent the closest the U.S. military has ever really come to fighting for freedom and democracy. Thomas and his comrades are not transformed into cold-blooded killers for the imperialist war machine. They are seizing the opportunity to become liberators. Glory is a sausage fest. There's only one woman character, and she has one line.
Colored soldiers, Rob, just think of it.
The film is about masculinity and the bonds and brotherhood that form during war. The men in Glory grow in how they express their masculinity by embracing the bonds forged by their shared life-altering experience. They do this by building trust, being vulnerable with each other, and sacrificing for each other. Masculinity has often been the weapon of the oppressor. They set the standard that only they can achieve and punish others who fall short. The planter class used this weapon to justify horrific, multi-generational chattel slavery. The story of the 54th Massachusetts It's an example of masculinity being harnessed by the victims of this evil institution to smash the systems of their exploitation and enact some sort of retribution upon their oppressors. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on all the socials. But don't forget, the future is ahead of us.